Hello, and welcome to Wellness Wednesday. I am Crystal Allen-Joyner, Assistant Director for CAPS. So we're just going to give it just a few moments to see if anybody hops online with us, and then we'll get started. Let's see here. All right, so today's topic is something that's a little bit different. We're not necessarily talking about any type of mental disorder this week. We're focusing on how to get the most out of your CAP session or any therapy session. If you see a therapist outside in the community, outside of Mercer, it's all the same. So today I kind of wanted to talk about how to get the most out of it, how to reap the benefits of it and bring your whole self to the session. So let's just get started. I'm going to share with you a couple of different things to consider, and I'm hoping that this information will be of value to you and that you'll be able to refer back to it before you schedule your next session. The information provided today is from Psych Central, and let's just begin. So there are a lot of different reservations in regards to going to therapy. Everybody has their own stigma associated with it. Sometimes people will say, I'm not good at this. I'm not good at therapy. What do I say? What do I do? It's going to be a total stranger. So don't worry anymore about that, because today we're going to cover how to prepare for your therapy session. Find the right fit. What do I mean by that? Finding a therapist, y'all, is just like trying on a pair of shoes, I'll be honest. Some fit well, some do not. Therapists are actually very diverse in their approach to treatment. And here at CAPS, our therapists are all diverse in our own treatment approach, and we come from all different unique and diverse backgrounds. Finding the right therapist is like I said before, it's like trying on a new pair of shoes. Which one is the best fit for you? The important thing is to not give up on getting help and being open to finding the right fit. I'm not sure if you guys know, but even here at CAPS, you may get a therapist and it might not be a great fit. That's okay. It's no bearing on the therapist and it's no bearing on you. Remember, it's about your health and wellness, you growing as an individual. And so you actually have the option to be able to request for a transfer, the same thing that you would do in the community if you scheduled an appointment with the therapist and conversations just didn't flow like you were looking for them to flow. You have the option to be able to identify a different therapist. The next thing to think about is view therapy as a collaboration. You guys, therapy is not a spectator sport. Once you're in your session with your therapist, your path to wellness is a team effort. Your therapist may be the guide, but you carry the responsibility of opening up about difficult aspects of your life. Set specific goals or have some insight on what you would like to achieve by going to therapy. By setting specific goals, you're better able to track your progress along the way and in turn, more likely to reach your goals. So we've talked about finding the right fit in regards to a therapist, and how you should view therapy as a collaboration, setting goals. The next thing to consider is schedule sessions that are good for you in terms of your time. Becoming vulnerable is so exhausting. You tap into so many feelings and emotions in your therapy sessions. You want to make sure you choose the right time when you have the mental space to be present with your therapist. It is also good to maintain your appointments. We understand that life happens, but if you're not able to make your appointment, be sure to call CAPS as soon as possible, cancel, or even reschedule your appointment. Something else to consider. You can say anything in therapy. Remember, this is a judgment-free zone. Therapy is your opportunity to be able to talk about the tough things that you've never discussed before. Let's talk a little bit about confidentiality. So whatever you share with your therapist is completely confidential. The only times that we as professionals have a professional duty to warn is if you tell us you want to harm yourself or someone else, or if you're aware of any active child or elderly abuse, okay? Remember, this is your opportunity to say tough things, to talk about those difficult areas in your life. Therapy is a judgment-free environment. If you're having a hard time opening up about traumas, negative feelings, and habits that make you feel ashamed, you're not alone. Verbalizing your struggles and habits that make you feel ashamed, verbalizing your struggles is a critical piece to the therapeutic process. Try not to pretend to be okay and fight against any desires to shrug and just say you're fine. So think about what I just said. Therapy is a judgment-free zone. It's so important and it's critical to your wellness for you to be open and honest about your feelings, your emotions, and what you're going through. The more present you are in your session, the better results you'll see. If you present that everything's okay, that's the less that you're going to be able to get out of your therapy, because the therapist can only help you as much as you allow him or her to. Be honest in your sessions. We understand that things might be difficult to talk about, definitely. But keep in mind, your therapist's ability to help is limited by how honest you are with them. By practicing honesty and vulnerability, you're giving yourself the opportunity to grow and to heal. Talk about therapy in therapy. That's the next thing to consider. When you expose your innermost feelings in therapy, it's normal to experience intense fear and sometimes stress. That just means that you're actually buying into the method for healing, and you might have some buyer's remorse. You may use therapy to talk about those feelings as well. Rather than pushing those negative feelings away, acknowledge them head on with your therapist for opportunities to reflect. Sounds familiar? So remember, we've gone over a couple of different things right now. Finding the right fit, viewing therapy as a collaboration, scheduling sessions at a good time that's feasible for you, saying anything in therapy, and talking about therapy while in therapy. Another option to consider is setting landmarks for change. Psychotherapy is not a straight line solution to problems. Think of therapy as a process that helps you build constructive habits and thought patterns. When you fall back on thought processes, don't beat yourself up. Acknowledge by being self-aware and redirect your thinking. Get back on track. Aim for progress, not perfection. Okay? The next thing to consider is, this is a big deal. Do your work outside of your sessions. Practice implementing the tools you've learned in therapy in your day-to-day life. It's the best way to see personal growth. If you're not sure about what to do between sessions, ask your therapist about actionable ways you can carry out your therapy outside of the confines of your session. Be prepared. Take notes throughout the week and come to session with an agenda. Points based on things that you would like to discuss. This is your time. Let's talk about what's on your mind. And remember to write down key points during your session, especially if something really hit home. So that section right there, I kind of want to stay on it just a little while longer. How do you see growth and progress as a client? How do you implement these tools? You do them day to day, whether it's breathing techniques, whether it's practicing positive thinking, removing negative self-talk, self-sabotaging behaviors. Practice the tools that you're provided in therapy session in your day-to-day life. Like I said before, if you fall back, that's okay. Talk about those things. Write down what was going on throughout the week. Bring it to your session and talk about it with your therapist. Set boundaries around your therapy. This is a big one, you guys. Therapy is truly a safe space. Sometimes, though, you might need to guard that space from others. So what do I mean by that? Friends and family might actually ask you about your therapy. You don't have to feel obligated to divulge what happens in your sessions. When you talk about whatever you talk about with your therapist is meant to help you alone. Sharing that confidential information with others outside of the therapy session, it might actually open you up to unnecessary criticism and the opinions that are not conducive to your mental healing. So just be careful about sharing things that take place in your therapy session with family and friends. It's not a secretive thing. It's not a private issue, but just be mindful about setting the appropriate boundaries around what's discussed so that you can continue to grow and develop and get the support that you need. Number 9, savor the process. Therapy can be heartbreaking, illuminating, and transformational. The therapeutic process is not an overnight thing. It requires an individual to be intentional about learning, growing, and making small changes that will last a lifetime. One last question that always comes up in therapy is, what if I run out of things to talk about with my therapist? I get that all the time, and that's actually okay. Ask yourself whether or not it's time to actually end your therapy sessions. Psychotherapy isn't meant to last forever. So if you used to find it easy to think of things to talk about, and now you're at a point where it's kind of difficult to come up with things to talk about, it might be a sign that you've actually reached an end point for that session or the sessions in this season of your life. Now, that doesn't mean that you can never go back to therapy. You can always come back. But it just means that maybe you've actually reached a turning point. Maybe you've actually grown in some areas and you're having less difficulties because you're actually implementing the strategies and techniques that you've been talking about with your therapist in your sessions. So let's talk about the structure of CAPS, the Counseling Center here at Mercer. Again, all of our sessions are completely confidential. And at no point do we discuss anything that's shared in these sessions without your written consent. Students are typically scheduled to see a therapist every other week, so that looks about every 2 weeks. And the purpose for this is to give every client the opportunity to utilize those skills and techniques and strategies to prevent a client from becoming codependent upon the therapist and never learn how to self-soothe. Types of therapy appointments that we offer here at CAPS would be individual appointments. We do relational therapy, whether it's between couples, family members, roommates, and we also provide crisis management. The format in which we provide therapy could either be through our telehealth platform or it can actually be through in person. So let's talk a little bit about scheduling. So when you call CAPS, we have this wonderful administrative assistant, and you're going to always be asked, is this an emergency? So what does an emergency really look like? If you're unsure whether it's an emergency, that's okay. Our CAPS representative may ask the following questions to help determine if it really is an emergency. So what questions would the therapist typically ask you? Are you having any suicidal thoughts? Do you have a desire to harm someone, or are you thinking about harming yourself? Have you been unable to sleep for the past 3 or more days? Are you hearing voices or seeing things that other people do not see? Have you experienced any traumatic event within the last few days? Has someone close to you recently passed away? If you do not have an emergency but still need to speak to a counselor, our CAPS representative will transfer you to a therapist to be able to assess your need. So remember, I told you today's session is going to be a little bit different. We're just kind of talking about the structure of CAPS, how to get the most out of your sessions. I'm going to go over them one more time because this is actually going to be a pretty brief Wellness Wednesday session. But to just kind of recap, find the right fit. Remember, finding a therapist is just like trying on a pair of shoes. If it doesn't fit, find a different therapist. View therapy as a collaboration. Remember, it's about you setting specific goals and being able to open up and talk about your feelings and emotions as it relates to your wellness. Scheduling sessions at a good time. Remember, therapy sometimes, being vulnerable can be totally exhausting. So you want to make sure that you've got the mental space to be able to be present with your therapist during your session. Saying anything is okay to say in therapy. Remember, it's a judgment-free zone. And of course, everything is always confidential. Talking about therapy in your therapy. that basically deals with being very careful about sharing information that is taking place during your therapy session to family members and friends, because you never know whether or not they will be supportive of your growth and development. So right now I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to give you a little tour of our counseling center. I don't know why I'm a little tongue-tied today, but that's okay. We'll get through it. So I'm going to put my mask on, and we're going to take a little journey. See here if I can flip my camera around. All right, so this is actually, if you've never been here before to CAPS, or if most of your sessions are done online, this is what most of the offices typically look like. This happens to be mine. Okay, so we're gonna walk out into the waiting area. And oh good, Dr. Piasek actually has her door open, so that means she's not in session. This is our director. Just gonna do a quick peep in. We're gonna come on out. Here's our another therapist. And here's our wonderful administrative assistant, Miss Ginger. Typically, if you call CAPS, you're probably gonna talk to Miss Ginger. And remember, we went over the emergency questions. She's typically gonna be the individual that's gonna ask you those questions. Here's our waiting area. And we are following all COVID protocols. When you come into the office, we're asking that everyone takes their temperature with the thermometer and wear a mask. So where are we located? So let's walk out here just for a moment. We're actually on the outside, on the back portion of MEP. It was just a little bit different. As I said earlier, we've provided to getting the most out of your sessions. And until then, we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.